So what we're going to do in the last part of the review of these practice problems for test 3 are the problems that have to do with the voting methods. So here is problem 26. With working through a pairwise comparison problem, we want to see how many points Carol has when she's compared with candidate A, Andy, and candidate B, Bob. So let's take a look at reading this chart. I am going to put a big X through Andy and Bob's comparison because I just want to compare C and Carol with Andy and C with Bob. I don't care what's going on with Andy and Bob. I just want to take a look at wherever there's a candidate C for Carol. So in this column right here, this voter said Andy and Carol were about the same. Remember, we're splitting a point. So Andy and Carol split the point. We're just worried about Carol's points. Member 2 said the same thing. Andy and Carol were about the same, so we're going to split that point. Member 3 preferred Andy over Carol, so Carol gets nothing in that comparison. Going over to the Bob comparison with Carol, member 1 preferred Carol to Bob, so Carol picks up the entire point. Member 2 said Bob was better than Carol, or Carol was less than Bob. So there's no points there. And then the last comparison, member 3, Carol was preferred over Bob, so Carol picked up a point. So what I'm going to do is add up all of these points. 1, 2.5, 3. Carol would get 3 points. So there's how you read the chart for pairwise comparisons. Number 27, a majority rules voting method equation problem. We have Tom with 123 votes, Alex with 112 votes. To get the majority, we have to add those up between those two. We have 235 votes. Sam knows he has to get one more vote to get more than the majority. So if Sam gets 236 votes, he wins. Andy has the majority, more than 50%. A definition problem for number 28. What we have here, we want to see what the Condorcet criterion or Condorcet candidate is all about. And this is the comparison head-to-head, one-on-one battle with every other candidate. And if that candidate wins, they should win the election if they are favored in these head-to-head competitions. My choice would be B. Let's take a look at 29 and this chart for the next few questions. This one's a little bit tough. I want to do two parts for number 29. I want to see the first place votes for Cindy, and I want to see the total points for Cindy. So here's what I do with the first place votes. Cindy is in first place with those 2 voters and those 6 voters. So Cindy gets 2 voters, giving her 3 points. Cindy gets 6 voters, giving her 3 points. So that would be 6 plus 18. She would have 24 first place points. So that's how you would get the 24 first place votes, points for Cindy. If you wanted to take a look at her entire point total, let's get the entire points for Cindy. Cindy, for 6 people, was in last place, so she only gets 1 point. For 1 person, Cindy was in second place. She gets 2 points. For 4 people, Cindy was again in last place. For 10 people, Cindy was in second place. She gets 2 points. For these 2 people, Cindy was in first place. She gets 3 points. For those 6 people, Cindy is in first place. She gets 3 points. If I add up all of those points, Cindy would have a total of 56 points. So there is how you would do 24 points for first place, 56 for a total of first place. for a total of points using the board account. Now, for number 30, we want to do a majority rules and see who wins this election. So what I have to do here is I have to add up all of these voters so I can see what's needed as a majority. So when I add up all of those voters, I would get a total of 29 voters. So coming down here, I have 29 voters. I need a majority. So my majority would be 15 votes. And people always ask, how did you get 15? I'm going to divide that by 2 and come up with 14.5 votes. I round that up to 15. So if a candidate gets 15 first place votes, they can win the contest using majority rules. Let's see if we can get a winner. Candidate A was in first place 6 times there, 1 time there. Candidate A gets 7 votes for first place. Candidate A does not have a majority for the win. Candidate B, 10 plus 4, 14 votes, does not get a majority. They're close, but does not quite get a majority of 15 votes. And then candidate C, 2 for first place, 6 for first place, for a total of 8 votes. Nobody gets 15. My answer is choice D. Okay, so there's how you would do a majority rule wins. For the total points for Cindy using board account, it was 56. For the first place, it was 24, and nobody wins using majority rules. Let's take a look at the plurality method here for the same chart. Candidate A had 7. Candidate B had 14 votes in first place, and candidate C had 8 votes in first place, and where I got that from was this previous problem on 30. The plurality method, the candidate with the most votes wins, does not have to be first place. So candidate B wins because candidate B had 14 first place votes. Now, 32. If we have a board account method and we have 10 voters and we have 5 candidates, if we have 10 voters and all voters vote for the same candidate for first place, they would pick up 5 points 10 times for a maximum of 50 points. That's the maxed out number of values of points a candidate could get. 33. Tom has 123 votes. Alex has 112 using the plurality method. This is nice and easy. Sam would need 124 because whoever has the most votes wins. If Sam can accumulate 124 votes, Sam would be the winner because Sam would have the most number of votes. The last one, going back to statistics, a histogram, this one would be skewed to the right because we're stepping down towards the right. And that takes care of all of your answers for practice test 3.